Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. My name is Trainer Chip Ritchie, and I am joined here, as always, by my regular co-host Azul GG. What's good, Azul? How you doing this week, man?
I'm doing okay, Chip. Just a little tired. Getting a little bit worn out from I guess the traveling. It hasn't been too much
Bro,
yet,
you've been
and
to
I'm
two
going to
tournaments.
I feel like I'm doing so much more now though in
hmm
between the tournaments, more content, or I'm trying to do more content. That's something that I've always kind of slipped up with in the past when the traveling got more hectic, and then a lot of coaching, which I'm actually really been getting into a lot as far as just like something I enjoy doing. So I've been really enjoying doing the coaching and trying to become a better coach with all that stuff. But I'm doing a lot of that. My schedule's basically been full since 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before Indiana. So been really just really busy. Definitely feeling the feeling worn down by it all. That's why I decided to not go to Vancouver regionals next weekend. So I'll be in Jersey this weekend. Be good to see everyone again. There's going to see some of the East Coast homies who didn't quite make it all the way out to Indiana. So it's going to be another fun time for sure. But yeah, definitely tired. How about you? How you feeling?
Doing pretty good. The AC upstairs in our house has not been
Oh.
working the last like a week or so it's very hot up here. But we're recording late at night, so it's at least a little cooler than it was earlier today. So we're having someone out tomorrow that hopefully it's gonna get taken care of and fixed. I think we are gonna get scheduled to get a new AC unit put in, which is a little expensive, but the system that's in here is as old as the house, so it's about time. So always just unfortunate when those big expenses come up, but it's kind of just something that you expect is going to happen at some point. You got to be ready for it. And so hopefully by the end of this week, before I head out of town to New Jersey, that'll get taken care of. And speaking of which, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about this week. One of the things being New Jersey, Lille, and Perth regionals. But before we talk about that, we're going to be mentioning the NAIC registration, which was just announced. It is going to be going live today, the day that you are listening to this podcast, if assuming you are listening to it the day that it comes out. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, the 3 upcoming regionals this weekend. We will have Guess That Flavor Text once again, and a reminder. Now, the flavor text segment does include lifelines to potentially help bail us out of sticky situations, hopefully, get us some more answers. And then we're going to be taking some viewer questions from Twitter. We're going to have those sprinkled throughout the regional championship section as well. But there's a lot of good questions, relating to specific questions about decks, all the way up to more broad questions about just regionals in general. So we'll talk about a lot of those different things. If you're not following the podcast over on Twitter, it is at uncommon_energy. And before these regionals, we like to throw out a, just a little Q&A, just ask people what are some of the things they're wanting to know, and we try to get to them on the podcast when we can.
Yeah, so definitely go make sure you follow the Twitter and let us know your questions next time we do one of the Q and A's. But yeah, first talking about NAIC registration, early announcement. They're doing it in 3 waves at 3 different times. Of course, that makes sense because NAIC is not only the biggest North American tournament, it's the biggest. It's the besides Worlds, it's the most international tournament. I feel like of the of the of the year besides Worlds. Like the most people travel to
Yes.
NAIC from out of North America. So 3 different. I feel like it was a little bit. Still feels a little bit uh East Coast friendly. It's like 12 p.m., 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. is when the waves will be happening over at RK9 Labs. Um, and then I don't think it'll be like a huge hit the cap really fast situation. I feel like there's gonna be a ton of room. It's in Columbus again. That's a pretty big
It's
space.
huge. It's
Yeah, it's huge.
huge.
It's a big space. I don't think we've ever hit the capacity at Columbus. I think we hit it at Indianapolis one year for NAIC at like 1,600
Mhm.
players or masters. I forget. But yeah, they announced it way ahead of time, or a decent amount ahead of time. They announced it today, and it's happening tomorrow. I guess that's like reasonable, right?
Yeah, I
I mean,
wouldn't call that way ahead of time for sure, but I
yeah, I
mean,
guess.
they didn't just drop it on us, so there was at
Yeah.
least a little bit of an announcement. It was announced over on the at Play Pokemon Twitter, definitely an account you want to be following to stay up to date with any announcements and stuff, things that are going on in the competitive Pokemon world. And I'm definitely going to be interested to see with these 3 waves how many spots are available for this tournament. I would say that the event hall in Columbus is bigger than the hall was in Indianapolis. I mean, it's just a massive space, assuming they're using the same one they've used in years past. So I hope that it's going to be a similar situation to Indianapolis where there's plenty of spots. You know, Indianapolis didn't actually end up capping for TCG Masters. I don't know what the case was for all the other games. But something else to consider for these international championships, I do believe that all 4 games will be present. I know TCG and VGC will be there. I'm pretty sure Pokemon Go will be there, and I'm pretty sure that Pokken Tournament will be there as well. So we got 4 different games competing for not only event space, but also for space for the people, right? For the players,
Yeah.
you know, and these events are always. I feel like there's a lot more, you know, juniors and seniors who are going to be at these big tournaments,
Yep.
and they always have +1s with the spectator badge for parents to come along. So all of these things get factored into caps and things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this does hit a cap really quickly, if they've like reserved some space maybe, or it could just be all of the space that is going to be made available goes live in wave 3, and it's like after wave 3 sells out, that's it, we're done. Who knows?
I mean, I'd imagine that's how it goes, and they just kind of break it up so, like, you know, people have time to, you know, not be at work or not be asleep. Um, it's like I said, it does feel still kind of clustered together. Like 12 p.m. EST, 4 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. EST. I feel like you could have started at like 10 a.m. EST,
Yeah.
4 p.m. and then 10 p.m. or something. You know, spread it out a little bit more. Because like I said, it is like a very much it feels, you know, it's the closest thing we have to Worlds as far as international events go. The most people who are going to travel to an international event outside of Worlds is going to be NAIC. So I feel like maybe could have split it up a little bit more, but I'm sure everyone will be able to make it work to be available at one of those times. Yeah, I assume they'll just kind of like let the floodgates open at 8 p.m. I'm sure there's caps for 12 and 4. There's probably only so many slots. Like if
Yeah, I
there's a
wonder if it's
thousand
like
slots, it's
33% of capacity at
yeah.
each of the spots, maybe.
I feel like the early time slots they'd maybe do less, and that maybe it's like I don't know 30, 40 or something.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't think it'll cap. I would hope not. I would hope it doesn't cap, but it doesn't seem like it would. The one time we did have an AIC cap, like I said before, I don't even know which one it was. It was a while ago, but like it was like we were like 2 or 3 weeks in, and the only people who didn't get to go were people who just like, you know, didn't register within like a reasonable amount of time. You know, we were like 2 weeks into registration being open, and then I was like, oh wait, and registration capped. And everyone was like, wait, what? So you know, if you didn't register within 2 weeks, and now we're doing like, you know, you have to register within 24 hours, or you know, you're not
24
going to be able to make
seconds.
it. It does feel like that sometimes. 24 seconds, yeah. So yeah, but I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. It should be. It looks like they're handling it better. They announced it on the Play Pokemon Twitter. Have they been announcing any of the regional registrations over on the Play Pokemon Twitter, or has it just
Not
been
on the Play
NAIC now?
Pokemon Twitter. The regional registrations have all been announced by Arcanine, which is also an account you should follow at RK9 Labs on Twitter, because they handle the registration for all the Pokemon events, the regional special events, internationals, all that stuff. So they tweet out all the stuff as well. But yeah, I think it's just been for international so far that Pokemon has been handling the tweeting, the announcements, all that stuff, it seems like.
Okay, well, yeah, at least they're announcing the internationals over there,
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
I think that's partially just because like the regionals are all organized by different tournament organizers.
Yeah,
Like Indianapolis was organized by Round 3 events, right? Whereas NAIC and EUIC, the international championships, and then eventually Worlds, and then you know past that the other internationals, assuming they all happen same as normal next season. Those are all held by Pokemon. Like Pokemon is the tournament
yeah,
organizer for those major tournaments, so it makes sense that they are the ones tweeting, I guess, for those big time tournaments.
yeah. And I'm not saying like that the regionals organizers aren't trying, but if you're not like in a Facebook group, it feels like it's really hard to get the info about regional registration. It's either you follow RK9 Labs on Twitter, or you're in one of the big like Pokemon TCG Facebook groups, or VGC, whatever. Otherwise, you're just not going to hear about registration. No one's following round 3 events on Twitter, right? Like I didn't even know they had a Twitter until I think you said it right now. I can't think of a time when I've known they had Twitter, right? So it's like, I mean, follow RK9, go follow RK9, because I think they're always retweeting when any because it's all the registration goes through, you know,
Yeah.
RK9 Labs. So all of or RK9.gg is the site now. And I guess another thing with RK9.gg, and I should just like maybe at them on Twitter. But like they have like a a page for events, but you can't get to it by being on the main page of Arcane. Like I tried to find it and I just could not find it
It's up
to
in the
find the
top
main
left.
event
You click
page.
on tournaments.
No, I thought they had like a different page that I was like looking for, and maybe I'm just kind of
You
tripping.
click the little drop down menu, tournaments, and then you can click
Tournaments.
on regional tournaments or team challenge tournaments.
Oh no, you're right. There it is. I don't know what I was looking for the other day and I couldn't find it. No, that's like all right.
You're right. There
Um,
it is.
it felt hard to find, but yeah, go follow. I guess I play Pokemon, follow Arcanine, but I feel like besides those two, it's really hard. Like if you're not, like I said, in a Facebook group, one of those old school Pokemon Facebook groups, you're just not gonna know when registration is gonna be happening. Like there's no central Pokemon TCG hub that you should just be able to like. There should be announcements on like if you go to Pokemon.com, you click on the trading card game part, there should be like an announcement there, and then Play Pokemon should always be announcing when registrations are live. So just have it be a little bit more centralized, but at least. I mean, now that if for anyone listening to this, just go follow RK9 on Twitter at the very least, because they'll always be tweeting about when any registration stuff is happening. So
Yeah, I was talking to some of the Pokemon Go casters. I think it was. It might not have even been the Go casters. It might have just been someone at Indie playing Go who was talking about how when they logged into Pokemon Go, there was a big thing on the front page that said this weekend Indianapolis Regional Championships, and it was like either I don't remember if it was like register for the tournament or just a link to the stream. I was like, man, it would be really cool if there were other Pokemon games that could implement something like this. Like, I don't even think the video game has anything like that. So, I mean, that's great for Pokemon Go. They're still new to the competitive scene, the play Pokemon scene. But I really wish that, people could log into PTCGO and see, like, register for upcoming Pokemon events or
yeah,
watch this weekend, any of those type of things. Just because there's such a wide player base for PTCGO even that I think most people don't even realize. Like there's a huge like casual PTCGO base that doesn't know who you are, doesn't know who I am, doesn't know that competitive Pokemon is even really that much of a thing. They just play Pokemon on their iPad because they know what Pokemon is, right?
yeah, it seems like a super missed opportunity. And then like I don't know, so I mean, there's a lot of things that PDCGO has kind of dropped the ball on, or the way they've tried to used it as a product or whatever. But hopefully with PDCG Live,
All right,
wherever that
bro.
is right now.
Listen.
I have not logged on. I've not seen anything about. Does anyone play PDCG Live anymore? Yeah, I haven't logged on in months, or it's been at least a month. No, it's probably been two.
It's been a
But
minute.
yeah, it's been a minute. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know if they're making changes with it, but hopefully, if everything gets fixed and solved, that's something they add to PDCG Lives, a little banner or something on the homepage that says watch when the streams are happening. Be like, yo, streams are happening. If they had it in client, that'd be sick. But just linking them over to Twitch is fine. Link them over to the Twitch channels where they can watch the action live. And then when tournaments are coming up, you know have there be a little banner thing. Just when tournaments are coming up, just be like Pokemon Regional Championships coming up. Go register or play in them, whatever. Just
Yep.
take them to a tournament landing page or whatever, and people can see what tournaments are coming up and see if there's any near them that they would want to play in.
And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I think part of the reason for that right now, at least, is that they don't have the capacity to handle that many more people trying to register for these events. Like they're already capping super quickly. But
Yeah,
we talked about this a few weeks ago, so we don't have to dive super deep into it. But the gist of it is like, if there's a demand for it, we should try to make space for it to happen because it feels like the competitive Pokemon TCG, even though like our numbers are like pretty decent compared to what they have been, it's always just compared to other games in our space, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Flesh and Blood, whatever else there is out there. We just kind of pale in comparison to their viewership and
yeah,
their player base, which is ridiculous since our game as a whole is so much more popular when you look at like just sales and stuff like that. So many more people buy Pokemon cards than buy Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic cards, but it's like a fraction of those people actually play the game compared to the other two.
yeah. And I mean, I don't really expect anything from PDCG Live right now. They have enough other stuff to worry about. But hopefully, when things get sorted out over there, that's something that
Yeah.
is definitely added and implemented. Is just some in game. I remember when they first did it way back in StarCraft. Because like StarCraft was when it was a big esport. I used
Mm-hmm.
to watch competitive StarCraft all the time, and when they added like the little banner in the client that said, "Yo, there's a tournament going on this weekend," or BlizzCon was happening, and there was the competitive StarCraft players playing. You could click out of it, and it would take you to to the what's it called? They did that with League of Legends too at some point. But yeah, hopefully they do that. But yeah, it's a little ways off next season kind of thing for sure. Maybe for Worlds. That'd be like if they had a little banner, if they get live sorted out by Worlds, which who knows, maybe so that when the streams are live, be like, yo, the Pokemon TCG World Championships are going on, watch live now or something, you know. But we can be hopeful.
We can definitely be hopeful, and that's what we have been. That's, I guess, what we'll continue to be is hopeful. But moving on to the regional championships this weekend, and I guess speaking of the streams as well, New Jersey, Lille, and Perth regionals are all happening this weekend, and the New Jersey regionals will be streamed. I will be out there as one of the commentators for the event, so big thanks to Pokemon as always for bringing me out. I love getting to cast these events. It's my favorite thing I do right now, and yeah, I love getting to do that. And you will be going as a player as well, I know, Azul. Are you looking forward to it? Do you
Yep.
feel prepared for the tournament? I know you've been playing a lot of Pokemon as far as coaching and, streaming and content is concerned, but do you feel like you've been getting, real testing in for this tournament, or are you kind of going off the backs of what you've done from your coaching and stuff like that?
I mean, not like a whole ton of like new tests. You know, I'm probably just end up playing Mew again. I think I definitely didn't give myself the best shot possible the last couple of regionals. I definitely think I should have day two'd. I mean, I should have day two'd Indianapolis if I just like played a little sharper. So just gonna clean up my play, worry about that. I'm not like concerned with trying to solve this format. I'm not trying to come up with the next Urshifu dark box deck. I'm gonna let if anyone else wants to do that and come up with something that's great, but it's not something I'm like feeling pressured or wanting to even try and do. To be honest, I'm looking ahead to definitely towards the next format and trying to be be that person for the next format. But for the current format, it's been going on so long. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. And yeah, look towards maybe Milwaukee and NAIC to be the person who breaks the format for sure. But yeah, Mew probably for New Jersey.
Yeah, it does feel like this format has been pretty fleshed out. We've now had 8 major tournaments in this format, including regionals, internationals, and special events.
Yeah.
This weekend of tournaments will be event number 9, 10, and 11. Of course, New Jersey regionals in the US, Lille regionals in France, and Perth regionals happening in Australia. So, with so many tournaments happening in such a short span, all in the same format, I think it's just kind of natural that players start to feel kind of tired of the format. And I feel like that's really where a lot of people are. The meta has still continued to evolve, which I think is really cool. It does feel like maybe less stale than formats of the past that, kind of had this long drawn out process of how many tournaments there were in the format. So that is definitely a plus, but it does still feel maybe at least a little bit like you're kind of beating your head against the wall. I don't know. Can you relate to that a little bit when it comes to figuring out what you want to play?
Yeah, man, I don't think a whole ton has changed. I think like people are taking, and I think I mean I almost feel like a good example of this is like the deck that Kevin Kruger played to Indiana with like the the Corviknight VMAX and all that
Mhm.
stuff. And it's not like that deck is some new groundbreaking deck or anything. And I don't think Kevin thinks it is either. But it's like the format is so you just know what you're playing against, so you can like play a deck like that, which a little bit different of a kind of like Arceus build with different options because you know what you're going to play against. So all your options will be consistently good in your 9 rounds, or for the most part. Like you're going to play against Mew VMAX and you're going to play against Arceus, and that's about it. And then as long as you don't lose to all the Urshifus and all the Whimsicotts and all that stuff, that makes up maybe 20% of the meta total. Because I feel like Arceus, we haven't seen the numbers yet from Indianapolis, I don't think yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if Arceus decks are like 50% of the meta
Oh yeah,
right
I
now.
agree.
Like maybe more. Like, and it's not like they're all the same build, but so many Arceus variants play out very similarly into how they gain an advantage or lose the advantage in the early game. It kind of feels very similar a lot of the time in how your games play against them, or how the Arceus decks stack up against each other. Even when some have the Moltres or the Bees or the this or the that, they kind of stack up. Their early games stack up so similarly, and where the advantage is initially gained, that what your extra tech cards in there don't make a huge difference, to be honest. I mean, I think we saw Ian kind of push the boundaries a little bit at Indianapolis for sure. But even then, I don't think like Ian's deck is like leaps and bounds ahead of all the other Arceus decks. It's just like an Arceus deck with different options, right? Like some have Charon's Care, Ian's does not have Charon's Care, but it has more ways to take one-hit KOs or create awkward situations with like the Yoga Loop and stuff. So it's not like it's leaps and bounds ahead of everything else. And I think it was a pretty close matchup or the matchup against Isaiah was a pretty close matchup, but Isaiah did not draw well and like so well in 2 of the games. So it ends Ian's way that time, but it's not like the 2 Arceus variants were that much different. You know what I'm saying? So it does kind of feel like you can almost kind of play whatever you want with Arceus, or play Mew, or play like Urshifu or Whimsicott, and then there's not. It's really hard, I think, because Arceus is just so good and it's so hard to beat all the variants at once in a dominant fashion. It's like almost hard to, you just can't really tech against Arceus because like Dunsparce makes it impossible to gain that initial fighting weakness edge in the early turns and then force them to fall back on their backup attacker. I think Dunsparce is really what keeps Arceus so hard to counter.
Yeah, right, because it takes away the main drawback of the card. And really the only drawback that the card has is fighting weakness, which has pretty much never been a good thing to have in the Pokemon TCG. I think you mentioned that last week when we were talking about some of the new cards. Like, fighting Pokemon are always going to be around, and they're always going to be pretty decent, it feels like. So having just a 1-card inclusion that eliminates that completely, sure, there are answers to it. People have played things like the Birdkeeper Rowlet, the Yoga Loop, right? It's an easy Yoga Loop target, but if you're playing Manaphy, you can play around some of those things. If you put a Big Charm on your Dunsparce, it can't get Yoga Looped as easily, so...
Yep.
Lots of things that players can do to counteract that. It's just a basic Pokemon that takes away the main drawback of your card. But I think that it's a lot different than something else more recently, like Jirachi GX, which was a big part of the Mewtwo deck. I know a deck that you played a ton of, won a regional championships with. So there's a big difference there. I think players would, immediately make that comparison since the abilities are super similar. Jirachi GX was a 2-prize Pokemon, so it had a much bigger drawback. You had to really think about putting it in play, and when you put it in play, like making sure it was the right time to do it, because it was a pretty easy 2 prizes for your opponent to take at some point.
Yeah, and in that comparison, like Mewtwo had so many more weaknesses than
just its weakness.
Yeah, like the energies required to get on, like it wasn't easy to get the energy you needed on the Mewtwo, and then it's so super ability reliant on its ability that do you take away some of the other parts of it that a lot of decks tried to do, you can fall apart in those ways as well. And it's just a 90 HP on the chart. Yeah, it's definitely a different story for sure. But yeah, I mean that's I'm really excited for the next set. I think we got some big heavy hitters that don't need Arceus to exist and can compete with just kind of the raw power of Arceus with like the Palkia and the Samurott. So I'm excited to see how those cards play out specifically. But we're a little ways away, a couple weeks, but we're getting there soon.
Yeah, and I think that was just kind of naturally how it was going to be with the V-Star mechanic, right? Anytime they introduce a new mechanic to the game, it feels like that first set, the cards are like usually pretty good, right? Like the V-Star, Arceus V-Star, tag teams, Pikachu Zekrom, right? The first tag team to be in the, to be really good. And it was good through its entirety of existence in Standard, Pikachu and Zekrom, right? And
I guess it was like at the very beginning, it was not played at all, right? Before we got Coco, I think, was it?
Yes, it wasn't quite as good at the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, once Coco Prism came out, I think it was like one set after, or maybe it was Electro Power was a set after or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it definitely got a lot better as as time went on. And I think that we'll just kind of see as more Pokemon V-Star come out, Arceus will still be good, but maybe fall back a little bit. Palkia can obviously stand up on its own. Hisuian Samurott, even looking to the future, things like Hisuian Zoroark V-Star. I think Lilligant is actually okay, maybe not as good as the other ones, but I think it is a lot better. The more I've watched some people playing it and stuff, I think it is better than maybe even we gave it credit for initially. So there's just a lot of, as more cards come out, it will feel less like an Arceus dominated field just because the card pool will expand. And that's just kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, and I do hope that Arceus doesn't become irrelevant when the next set drops. I think that's a bad sign if we're just kind of in the good cards are just rotating out every time a new set drops, which is bad because then we're just like literally it just means like the next set, those are the best cards. You just have to play those. You can't. It's like it means there's not as much depth to the meta where you can go back and bring these older cards to life, which we did see a little bit with this set when we got. I mean, everyone knew Mew was going to be a top deck, but with Urshifu kind of making a comeback, and then Whimsicott popped up eventually, but it was also a new card from the new set, right? So. We want to see the Whimsicotts and the Arceuses. Maybe Whimsicott not be. It won't probably be constantly good, but Urshifu or Arceus, I'm hoping stays around as a top deck of some sort. Hopefully, and hopefully, it's just not just to supplement other cards, but kind of its own Arceus decks, which is what we really have right now. It's not even Arceus supporting Pokemon, which is what I think a lot of people thought was going to happen a little bit more with Arceus. It really
Mhm.
is. You have your Arceus, and then you have your Moltres package, your Beedrills. Everything is supporting the Arceus. Nothing. Arceus isn't supporting anything besides like Arceus Duraludon, of course. But
Arceus is the star of the show for sure
yeah,
in pretty much all Arceus decks. So, moving on though, we're going to be talking mostly about New Jersey. Obviously, I think that the meta implications will apply to Lille and Perth regionals as well, but Azul is playing in New Jersey. I'm going to be commentating New Jersey, so that is really where the majority of our focus is going to be and what we're going to be mostly talking about. But I don't think that means that the information that we talk about for New Jersey is irrelevant for the other events. I think it's definitely very relevant and can be almost directly applied. Um, I guess just before we get into the decks, the meta specifically, talking about just tournament numbers in general. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. How do you prepare differently for a 600 player regionals versus 1,000 player regionals? Um, I think the case this weekend is going to be more like New Jersey will probably be around 500 ish. TCG Masters, just because of caps, it probably would have been much bigger, but it'll probably be around 500 ish because of the caps. I would imagine Lille regionals will be around 300 ish, 250 to 350, somewhere in there. And Perth regionals, the last Perth regionals was actually like 60 Masters, and Henry Brand won it. So it's been a couple of years since that regionals, obviously. So who knows what the player base is looking like right now? Will it be around that 50-60 mark? Will we see it break 100? Perth is definitely a lot more isolated in Australia compared to where the majority of the population is over on the the east side of the country. So, yeah, do you feel like there's really any difference in how you prepare for tournaments based on the sizing like that? How you metagame and things like that?
I mean, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Not last episode, but the episode
It
that
was a
we
few
did.
episodes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a difference. Like I predicted, when talking with the people I was testing with going into Indianapolis, I was like, it's going to be a lot of Mew, it's going to be a lot of Arceus, and then the deck to beat, I think, on the day to make sure you have a decent matchup against, I think, was Whimsicott, and then I played against one Whimsicott. I think they all played against 2+ Whimsicott, so my prediction was correct. Yeah, I was like, we're going to play against 1 to 2 Whimsicott day one. We all did. So yeah, I think that was like, I mean, that was it. It was like a lot of Arceus. Arceus with Baby Moltres was going to be the most popular. It was, and then there was going to be other Arceus variants. What they have, who knows? And then obviously Mew was going to be very popular, but nothing was going to be super special in any of the Mew lists. Of course, we did see the catcher build make a resurgence with a couple top eights in Indianapolis from the Canadian players. And then I was like, yeah, Whimsicott was going to be like the deck to make that. I personally was like, I want to make sure I have a fine matchup against. I don't want to have an auto loss to Whimsicott. Is basically was my thought going into the week. But I feel like no matter the Whimsicott doesn't actually really auto win anything. It's just kind of favorable depending on how you build your list. More basic energy in Arceus, or the Beedrill is really good against Whimsicott. And then I played the basic psychic and a training court in the Mew list to give myself to give us a slight edge against Whimsicott. It worked out. So but yeah, I don't think it changed. I think if that was the 1,000-person tournament that Indianapolis was, or if it was a 600-person tournament, my prediction still would have been this. My prediction would have been the same, and I think it would have been the exact same. It would have also, been the exact same result as well. Like, I don't think anything really changes too much from the size of the
Yeah.
tournaments. Maybe it'll be a different if like Perth really is 50, 60 people. I mean, I think people are going to be gunning for like Henry and Natalie and them.
Yeah, that's
So,
what I was going to say. I think like the difference between 300, 600, 1,000 isn't really that big, but if you're talking about something that's that small and
yeah,
concentrated, I think figuring out which good players are the ones that are going to be there and kind of knowing their tendencies of what types of decks they like to play, you can kind of make a prediction of what you feel like they'll stick with. So I feel like metagaming for that might be a little bit different just because it is so much more concentrated. We're effectively talking about a large league cup if it is around that 50, 60 player mark. I don't know what the registration numbers are, but I would imagine, based on it looks like the last couple Perth regionals were around that number. So if history holds true, it would probably be something similar.
Yeah, and I don't even think their most recent regional in Brisbane, I think it was about the same number as well. So it
It
doesn't
was
even
like
seem like there
200.
was.
It was like 180, I think.
Yeah. No, I think like it was like 200. This time it was like 190 the
Oh,
last
previously. Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
I,
previous.
I see what
So
you're
I don't.
saying. Yeah.
So it seems like there might not be that much growth in terms of overall player count. So we could see Perth, maybe it goes from 60 to 70, right? Or we could see quite a bit bigger. Maybe a lot of people are, trying to get because the points needed to get an invite over there is quite a bit less than it is in North America. So, people could be, especially all the people, I think because it's like is it 250, 350, I think. I know it's
I've
less. So anyone who is sitting at like 200 points, a top 8, and they're looking pretty good for their invite all of a sudden in one of these regionals because the top 8 is what, 100 points? I don't even know. I think it's 100 points.
Yeah, so first place is 200. Second place, I believe, is 130.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I
That's got
think
to be
top eight is
150.
like 80 or something like that. Maybe it's 100, I want to say. I don't know. So to qualify for Worlds in Masters, in the US, it's 500. In Europe, it is 350. Latin America, Oceania, and the Middle East and South Africa are all 250.
Okay, so yeah, this is like that. I could definitely see more people, players who would have probably been able to get it with a couple League Cup wins. Now we're gonna be like, well, I'm kind of at 150 points. By top 8, go to Perth in top 8 or whatever, top 4, whatever. I got my invite, so I could see more people trying to make the trek, right? Because there's not those
Hmm.
cups and challenges to kind of pick up, and they only have what 3 regionals over there. I think there's one more for
I
them,
think
right?
it's
Maybe it's
3. Yeah.
yeah. So they don't have a whole ton of opportunities. So I could see it getting up to some bigger numbers, maybe 100, 120. But yeah, I mean, I have no idea what it's like to get to Perth. It doesn't sound like it's a very easy place to get to or convenient place to get to. But I don't know how long it is to drive there. Like, how long does it take to drive from
It-
one
so
side of Australia to the other?
Yeah, you can't, I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't, like, if you're driving
It's
through the
not
middle of
roads.
Australia, it's just like desert and like hills, and like there's not really a road to do
Kangaroos.
that. Yeah, yeah. But I was talking to Brent Tonneson, I think, at EUIC, and he was talking about Perth regionals a little bit, and I think one of the things he was saying is like, or like the comparison, for my dumb American brain, it was like going from Melbourne to Perth is like the same as going from New York to LA, right? So it's
Okay.
not, you're not really going to make that drive, right?
Yeah.
Just literal opposite ends of the country. And Australia is a lot bigger land size than I think a lot of people really think of. I guess us Americans, but anyway. But to get back to so regionals, we talked about points numbers just to clear it up and get the exact numbers out there. First place is 200 championship points. Second place 160. Top
Oh,
4 130. Top 8 100.
yeah.
And then at a kicker of 48, top 16 also gets 80 points. At a kicker of 100, top 32 gets 60 points. So we could definitely, I think it'll definitely hit the 48 kicker. And there's
Yeah.
a chance that it gets to the 100 as well.
I mean, there's just some, yeah, 48. If they get around, there's like 50 people. 16 of them are walking away with 80 points. If you were close to your invite, I mean, pick up a top 16 here, pick up a top 16, and wherever the other one. I don't know where their third regional is at. I don't know where that one
I think
is,
it's
but
it's in Melbourne once again.
Melbourne, you pick up some points there. I mean, you have your invite. I have no idea what people's points are looking like, but yeah, I think I definitely would make sense for more people to try and make the trek out to Perth. I have no idea how expensive flights are over there. I know it's like cheap to fly within Europe. In America, it varies. I don't know what it's like in Australia.
Yeah, I
To
don't
go
know.
from coast to coast.
Well, before
Um,
we embarrass ourselves to our Australian listeners any further, let's start talking about some Pokemon decks, stuff that hopefully we do at least know a bit more about. So, like we mentioned, Arceus. In the last episode, we kind of talked about how Arceus is just taking over the format. It feels like there's so many different variants. It is definitely the card of the format, the meta, like, defining card of the format, the thing that everyone is kind of centralized, how they build decks and how they, try to counter other Arceus decks or whatever throughout the format. It is all about Arceus VSTAR. And there's so many different variants as well. We saw Ian Robb win with the Arceus
Block.
anti-meta, counter deck with all the, the Galarian birds, the 2 prize birds, the 1 prize birds, the Hoopa, the Metacham. He had everything in there. We saw Isaiah Bradner take second place with Arceus Inteleon Beedrill. We've seen plenty of Arceus Dark decks pop up. Arceus Inteleon Dark, Arceus Beedrill Dark. Arceus Lucario won the the regionals
Joinville.
in Joinville, yep. And also there's, other Arceus decks that have popped up as well. Which ones going into this tournament, if you're like, okay, going into this tournament, if you know I want to play an Arceus deck, which one is the one to go with? And what are the upsides and downsides of each of them? So, like, let's just start Arceus Inteleon Dark. Upsides of it and downsides of it. I think, like, looking at Ian Robb's list a little bit more specifically, upsides, you have answers for everything. Downsides is because you have so many answers, I think you're going to be a little bit less consistent, and it's also probably a lot harder to play.
Yeah, but I feel like that. Yeah, harder to play. So if you have it locked down, I don't think it should matter. Like Ian got back-to-back top 8s at
Right,
regionals.
yes.
Like Ian didn't even go to EUIC, so it's not like Ian went to UIC, bombed to UIC, then came back and won it. Like literally, Ian's been to 2 regionals this year and has top 8'd both of them with not the exact same list, but basically the same style of Arceus deck, right? So it shows the deck is consistent enough to do it. Also, Ian, one of the best players in the game. I mean, you maybe have to be on his level to do it, but if you are, or if you just put enough time in with the deck, I mean, you can kind of do it for sure. The downsides, so the inconsistency downsides, I think it is one of those decks that is very much a best 2 out of 3 deck. Like you're content conceding game 2 after you win game 1 on like turn 2 and be like, nope, this ain't it. I probably too many things, or just drew too slow. Let's just go to game 3. Let's get this out of the way. I think it very much is a best 2 out of 3 deck. Like you're content you're content losing a match literally every single round. That's one of the things you have to know about the deck is just when to give it up. And just be like, I have a better shot in the next one, and just go to the next game, right? But yeah, they all. I mean, besides that, they all have their like. That's what I was like saying earlier. It feels like they do have something different about each of them. All the Arceus decks, but it's like the advantages are like slim in the mirror match. Like the Beedrill deck, obviously, I feel like Beedrill has one of the strongest Mew matchups overall. Because you don't have to rely on your opponent not drawing super well and just making it awkward for when you finally get to your baby Moltres turn. Of course, if you play the Moltres V, like Ian, you have more opportunities earlier on to start being aggressive. Whereas like the B is very consistent about just immediately answering anything your opponent throws at you. So the B's got that going for it. And I feel the B is definitely my favorite. So if I just randomly decide to roll up with an Arceus deck, I think I'll probably play the B. It's a ton of fun. Played it in a couple tournaments, or a tournament this week, went undefeated in that with the Arceus B. So that was fun. The deck's fun. And it's an Arceus deck, so as long as you have Arceus and something decent with it, it feels like you just don't have bad matchups.
Yeah, something I've liked about the Beedrill deck is that it has like just such a high burst potential where just out of nowhere you have like you start your turn with nothing and you end your turn by knocking out a Mew VMAX, right?
Yeah.
Like no other Arceus deck can do that. It feels like I guess that's actually not fair to say because you have Moltres V
Moltres
and
B.
yeah, regular Moltres.
We're giving up 2.
Yes.
Giving up 2 prize cards.
Yes, that is the difference there. So yeah, Arceus Inteleon Beedrill, definitely a lot of fun. Obviously, Isaiah Bradner got second place with the deck. And I think everyone in their group who played it made day 2. So maybe that's a good deck to choose if you're just like, I got to make day 2. I want to get my points, something like that. Want to get my last 50 for my Worlds invite. Arceus Inteleon Beedrill, not a bad choice.
Yeah, I will say that about the beach, it's definitely less. You have like less room for error in the early game as far as just like if you draw poorly, it's gonna hit a lot harder because you don't have like the baby Moltres to kind of fall back on to like just be like, oh, I'm gonna struggle to get all my prize cards, but at the end of the game, I'm gonna go baby Moltres, and you can't do anything about it. I'm gonna draw my last 4 prize cards that way. So that is one thing about the B deck. If you make a mistake early or slip up in terms of just general consistency, it definitely comes back to bite you a little bit more than I feel like some of the other Arceus builds. Speaking of other ones like the B Barrel build, of course, that has been seeing more play, and it did win. The Arceus Lucario B Barrel Crobat VMAX build did win Joinville regionals.
Yep.
And I think that the advantage of the B Barrel build is your turn 1, turn 2 are a lot more stable and consistent. I feel like you have the option of the Crobat, and you're playing like the 4 DTE count, so even when you go second, you can get off that, the Trinity charge. So it just feels like your early turns with the B Barrel build are just like just more solid. Whereas the Inteleon build, you're sometimes like, I don't know if they got the boss KO here. It's not looking good, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like when you're playing Inteleon, it's like a scramble to get Sobbles in play early game,
yeah,
and you have to worry about that a lot less with the Arceus Bibro because generally that version of the deck is going to play more supporters anyway, more like traditional draw supporters, and
yeah,
then you just got to get your one little Bidoof down, and if
yeah,
they boss KO your Bidoof, that means your energy, your Arceus got to keep its energy, so you're
yeah.
chilling, right? So, how do you feel about the Lucario? If you wanted to pair a fighting attacker with Arceus, is Lucario the way to go? Or would we maybe look at Galarian Zapdos and the fighting energy like what Ian had?
I was actually surprised they were able to make the Lucario work so well. It is kind of just like a solid attacker.
Yeah, it's
It
good.
does two
It's
hit KO.
good.
But when you're two hit KO trading and you don't play Charon's Care like Pedro did, that's kind of scary. Now, there was the Choice Belt plus the Goon Ping combo. So if you get triple basic energy on the Lucario, you can one hit KO Arceus at the 280 mark, but that's only if they don't have a big charm. And of course, I'm talking in terms of if they have Dunsparce in
Right.
play, which everyone plays Dunsparce. And not only that,
Not
everyone has
Ian.
a way to, not Ian, but yeah, but Ian's trying to trade back and forth aggressively. So like
Yes.
Ian's like, it takes a little bit of a different strat there. But I wouldn't even be surprised to see people start to add the Dunsparce in Ian's list for like almost like the mirror match. Like they know more people are going to show up with Zapdos, so now you get the edge up against everyone bringing Zapdos or stuff like the Lucario, and you just have your Dunsparce to make sure you're not losing kind of that prize race up against other lists of Arceus that are trying to more prize race than resource war them with the Charon's Care. So I think that'd be like probably a good ad going into this week. Would be the Dunsparce into the Arceus just for the other Arceus decks, and I'm sure Urshifu is gonna be still around, so it can't hurt to have another card against Ursh. But I guess you have to pick your cards right because like Ian ran the Hoopa V and the Manaphy. So yeah, I'm surprised that the Lucario worked so well for him because I think everyone was basically playing Dunsparce last weekend in Indianapolis, right? Like
Yes.
I feel like everyone was playing or 2 weekends ago now, everyone was playing the Dunsparce. And I think it'll be even more prevalent going into this weekend. If anyone who wasn't playing Dunsparce for whatever reason should
Yeah.
definitely have
I,
Dunsparce by
I bet if we
now.
had the stats of like decks with Arceus, how many of them played Dunsparce in Indianapolis? It was like 99%, and Ian
It
was the
had to be.
1%, right? So,
Yeah.
who knows where it'll end up? I mean, I definitely still think Dunsparce is good in Arceus. And speaking of techs in Arceus, do we feel like people should still be playing Manaphy? Obviously, Urshifu didn't do the best comparatively to how it did at EUIC. Tord still got second place with the deck
Yeah.
in Bilbo, but it didn't have the dominant effect across three events that it did at EUIC just the weekend or two previous. So Manaphy still worth the spot, or are you less worried about Urshifu this weekend?
So I think Urshifu will probably be about the same percentage of the field as Indianapolis. I didn't do great in Indianapolis. I believe Gibbs was like 702 or
He was
711
eight
going into day
one.
two.
He was 8-1,
8-1. So
but
and
he did not win a
042.
game in day
Yeah.
two. Did not win a game in day two. I
Yeah.
think it was one of
So
those things that like I think Mike Gibbs is a super good player, not someone who I
yeah,
think is on a lot of
definitely.
people's radar. I've watched him do really well at some of these full grip tournaments that I've been casting with Andrew the last few set releases. I think he's really good. I was keeping my eye on him throughout the day in Indianapolis, and he went into day two at 8-1 with Urshifu. So
Yeah.
obviously proving that good player playing the good deck is still going to do well. But I think his day two rounds were just tough. At the very beginning, he hit a bunch of good players, and back like the first three rounds, he hit just like other really really good players. And even if Urshifu has 50-50s against a lot of stuff, you're going to lose 50-50s. That's how it works,
Yep.
right? So, I think he lost to, I think he played against Estrada at one point. I think he played against Riley, if I remember correctly. So
Yep.
there was
That's the
just kind of
whims.
a lot of stuff that didn't quite go his way. I don't think, ended up winning a set in day number two, unfortunately, which it feels really bad to start 8-1 and then
Yeah. You're
go,
feeling good.
and then I think go 0-4-2 or something like that in day two. But that happens in Pokemon, especially in day two. The field is a lot tougher than in day one for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think the deck. I mean, I think toward placing second, of course, not everyone can match the play of Tord, and that was I think the only person to do well with Urshifu throughout all three.
That's right.
Urshifu with that build, Urshifu with the dark build, out throughout all three of the major events. I think it was the only one in top 16 in any of them, maybe even. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I don't think there was one in Indianapolis or
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Bilbo.
I do
But like
think. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think that in the couple games I played leading up to Indianapolis, the deck, like I was beating the Hoop of E's, and like there was close, but like it's not like a bad matchup. And I think like if you like the deck's good, if you want to tech for it. If I was playing Arceus, if I was gonna tech for it and I was playing Arceus with Dark, I would add Dunsparce and Hoopa. I wouldn't play the Manaphy, I don't think. But if I'm gonna play Arceus at this event, I'm not gonna tech for it personally. If I hit him, oh well, I'll Marnie and pray. But I'm personally am not gonna be teching. I'll play the Dunsparce, but that's for not just for Urshifu. So I'm not gonna. I personally would not tech for Urshifu, but I do think it will have a better showing this weekend than it did the previous weekend. I think it's so. I think specifically Tord is probably due for a for a dub with the Urshifu. I think.
Yeah, I actually think that Urshifu is going to do really well this weekend. I think that it will be more played this weekend than it was in Indianapolis, and it will definitely do better than it did in Indianapolis. I think it was a few different factors that led to players not wanting to play it for that tournament weekend. You know, obviously, a lot of people are going to be countering it. There was going to be a lot of Dunsparces, a lot of Manaphy's, and a lot of Hoopa V's in the Arceus decks. And even if you can beat those things, it's not fun to play against that every single round of the tournament. And almost every Arceus Dark deck, I think every Arceus Dark deck, it feels like, had Hoopa V in it, which
Yeah.
you can still beat the Hoopa V, but sometimes they just power it up in one turn and create it out of nowhere with the Raihan and energy switches or whatever it may be. And they one hit KO your Urshifu, and you're like, crap, what do I do? It's because it just one hit KOs your main attacker out of nowhere seemingly. So I think that it will do better this weekend because I think that people will cut their Manaphy's. I think people may cut their Hoopas. I do think Hoopa is still solid because it's kind of got that two-pronged utility where it's good against Urshifu and against Mew. But I think that Urshifu will definitely do pretty well. And I also think that part of the reason that it didn't do as well as it did at EUIC is that the main American group of players that played it at EUIC did not play it in Indianapolis. And I think that there's probably a few reasons for that. One of them being that I think this is just kind of something in general, it seems like from top players, is like they don't love to play the same deck in back-to-back events a lot of the times. I mean, I guess that's kind of a per player thing because some players do find a deck that they really like in a format and just stick with it, but it does feel like that group is kind of feeling like, I don't really want to play the same deck in back-to-back events. I want to evolve with the meta and kind of try to shift my deck choice to what I think did well and what I think will be brought by other players. So I actually wouldn't be surprised to see them or a lot of other good players come back with the Urshifu this coming weekend because Arceus is still really, really popular and probably just as a whole going to be the most popular deck. So if you feel like your matchup as the Urshifu player is good, probably a decent play.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I think that Urshifu was a decent play at Indianapolis as well. Like I said, I don't think Manaphy and Hoopa aren't stopping it. And like you said, Tord got second. I'm sure Tord tested against both of those things and was like, okay, it's like, all right, winnable. Runs it again, gets second, you know. Seems like Whimsicott might be the, besides with when Gustavo runs up against it, Whimsicott might just be the the true downfall to Urshifu, but probably not going to be way less of that than there was in Indianapolis. I think moving forward, it's had an abysmal showing overall. Besides, I guess I mean, Alessandro did win the special event, but besides that, had a really rough showing. I feel like overall for like how much was played and kind of how hyped the deck felt like it was going into the weekend, and I think it was more so just people learning the matchup as opposed to
people
teching
had
for
a
it.
game plan going into it, right?
Because I'm sure against Frank, people were just like, I don't know what's going on. Here we go. And Frank was like, all right, that's fine with me. And I'm sure there's still some of that going on. But yeah, I feel like there's, a lot more people had game plans. So you need, which is good to see. You need not just like a solid deck. Like Whimsicott's still a solid deck, but you need that good pilot behind it consistently. You're not just going to be able to show up with Whimsicott and fully cheese your way through a tournament, because I know a lot of people think it is a little bit cheesy attack. Crushing Hammers, like, it is a little bit cheesy, but you need a solid pilot like Frank or like Alessandro to actually push it to those solid finishes.
Yeah, so Whimsicott definitely did underperform a bit compared to how played it was. Specifically looking at Indianapolis, obviously, like you said, Alessandro
Yeah.
won the Bilbo special event with it. So let's just look at those two lists real quickly and talk about them. Alessandro played the one Shadow Rider Calyrex V, which I thought was a really interesting inclusion because it, with the Shadow Mist attack, can kind of get you an extra turn of energy disruption while you're trying to set up, but at the same time it like takes away your energy attachment for the turn, which I don't know how I feel about that. Whereas on the other hand, Riley, who got top 16 with Whimsicott in Indianapolis, played the one Zacian V from Celebrations, whose ability allows you to attach a psychic energy from your deck to one of your Pokemon, but it ends your turn. So I thought that was a really good inclusion. And honestly, if I had to pick between one of those two V Pokemon techs, I feel like I would lean more towards the Zacian. I don't know. I know you tested with Riley and Andrew, who played that deck a little bit leading up to the
Yeah.
event. So was the Shadow Rider something you guys had considered, or was Zacian just the way to go from the start?
No, we never even talked. I mean, I had thought about the Shadow Rider before, but like if they get it on the active on like you don't have to get it on the first turn, but like I think it's only really really strong against Mew. Like against Arceus, it's like okay,
Yeah.
but if you, but they still get the Trinity charge. Like if you're not removing the basic energy from them, and you're just being like, okay, you can't attach the special, they're just gonna like, all right, I'll just you did 10 damage. I will now Trinity charge, and you have no threat of doing 140 next turn. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay then. Like I guess you could also stop them. Like if you get the crushing hammerheads, you can stop the Trinity charge because they can't play the DTE. But when you're only doing 10 damage and you're a turn slower, I feel like it's not giving you that much momentum to work with. Whereas the Zacian, I feel like gives you a lot of momentum to work with, and even makes it so you don't have to rely on getting like that mid game Raihan in the middle of the game or setting up like Alessandro played. Alessandro played the EXP share,
Yep.
which Riley didn't. You don't have to try and get that EXP share down to continue to chain your Whimsicotts in the mid game. So I feel like the Zacian really is a super solid card in the deck. And in the list that we were testing out, we had an Adventurous Discovery at some point because there's a Luminion in there. So like turn one, you can go like Luminion, Adventurous Discovery, Whimsicott, attach, Zacian the energy, and you like fully set up off an Adventurous Discovery on your first turn. You can even get Crobat off it too, depending on what the hand is. You have so many outs to your basic Pokemon. It really like synergizes really well. But I don't think Riley ended up playing the Adventurous Discovery because the research can kind of do the exact same thing because
Sure.
you have so many quick balls and
So
fog
many
crystals.
ball search cards. Yeah, the fog
But I think the Shadow
crystals.
Rider is really, really good against Mew because you can lock your path to the peak and play as well. Like you lock the path to the peak and play, they can attach special energy, and it gives you a ton of time to set up your Whimsicotts from there and then eventually get into them. And I'm sure you could do some really cheesy plays with like Choice Belt Shadow Rider. And maybe that's what Alessandro had set up was like you put the Choice Belt on the Shadow Rider, you path to the peak, and like you boss a Genesect and hit. And like you just hit it until it gets knocked out or something. I don't know. You could even get like really creative and like bring up one Genesect and hit it 4 times, bring up another one, hit it 4 times, and then actually use Astral Barrage because that's also an option in the deck with the basic Psychic into a DTE. You can Astral Barrage, so maybe Alessandro was even getting getting cute with plays like that. And you could even like lock. You could put a DT on it, and then Shadow Mist is doing 0 damage. So you could like lock something in the active and be
Yeah,
like, I'm
yeah.
not doing any damage. You have to figure out a way to move this thing. Good luck.
Yeah, definitely plenty of things you can do. So last week leading or 2 weeks ago leading into Indianapolis, we talked about how if you were someone who was in a position where you had, 50 points away from your World's Invite after the 2020 season kind of ended, you're coming back now, you need 50 points, you just need to make day 2 to get your invite. We said Whimsicott was the deck to play. Do you still feel like that is the answer for this weekend if someone finds themselves in that spot? I definitely am a big fan of Riley's list. I think if I was to play Whimsicott, I would go that route, but I would feel less confident in saying it's the deck to play if you just need to get 50 points.
I think it still might be. I mean, you could pick up any Arceus variant that you enjoy playing as
Yeah.
well, and it doesn't really matter. You could just play one of like it literally does not like even Ryan Antonucci was on the winning against Ian Robb in round 14 with an Arceus B barrel list. He came in at 6-1, went 4-0, and then the effective winning against Ian Robb, which I heard was a pretty close game. Like B barrel's there up there too. Like you could pick any of these Arceus decks up and basically play them to reasonable success. The only thing with that is you're gonna have to play against a lot of Arceus mirrors, which is like that's why I would pick something like the Beedrill because at least it makes things more exciting when you hit the Arceus mirrors. If you just pick like a baby Moltres build, you're just like it's just so boring to play the mirror match when you both have baby Moltres in there. So or something like the Ian Robb build as well would be more fun. But literally any of the Arceus builds that you think is fun, you'll probably do fine with. But I think still Whimsicott's still a good choice. I think less people will be teching for it and trying to like build their lists around it. The Arceus decks might go to a couple more special energy because I know a lot of lists leading into Indianapolis were having like capture energy there. They were like 2DT, 2 capture, and then basics after that. So they were like leaning towards trying to get as much value out of those early turns, not trying to have as clunky of early turns. You know, like you said, hunting for Sobbles on that first turn, you know, the capture energy help a lot with that. And we even saw one capture energy in Bradner's list in
Yep.
that they got second with. There was one capture energy. They're just trying to, you know, that first turn, second turn, trying to really find your basic Pokemon as consistently as possible without hurting your your more consistent game plans throughout the rest of the rest of the turn. So I think any Arceus build, to be honest, that you enjoy, it's fine. They're all fine. And then besides that, I still think Whimsicott's pretty good deck to still pick up. Even though I said, like, you know, the best finishes we've seen from it have been from, you know, top players. It doesn't mean it's still not just one of those decks that, you know, you just don't have to put as much time into it, to be honest, to be able to push towards, you know, the higher level of play with the deck for sure. Still, I think so. I think it's still that deck for me.
So let's talk about Mew VMAX a little bit because, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but there's a lot of different things that players can do right now with Mew. And we're actually going to talk about our first Twitter question, which comes from at the Vandalorian, who asks, which Mew V list is better, Mateus, Andrew, or Natalie's? So Mateus, who got top 4 at EUIC, was playing the Pumpkaboo, the Scoop Up Net, the Tool Jammer as kind of the standout tech cards in that list. Andrew Estrada, who got top 4 at Indianapolis, was playing Pokemon Catcher, 2 basic Psychic Energies, and 2 Training Courts. Or Natalie's list, which has kind of been the cookie cutter Mew list, it feels like, throughout the entirety of this format, with the Echoing Horn, the all special energies, stuff like that. 3 different kind of ways to play the deck. Which is it? One of these 3 is one of these 3 the best way to move into this weekend, or do you have to find a combination of the 3 to move forward with?
I mean, I don't think there's really like I don't think about it in terms like that. Like, it's just kind of, I guess there is like a little bit, but they're not that different, and they're trying to
No.
just like change their lists up for different scenarios. I think the biggest difference is catcher or no catcher,
Yes.
and I think that could be argued as being optimal or not optimal, because I don't think the meta is going to evolve too much from Indianapolis to New Jersey and then to Vancouver. They're probably one of those is probably just correct. And I like the catchers. I think it adds like a new level of aggression for the Mew deck, because like when you're so calculated and like your turn to turn game plans, being able to all of a sudden go Elsa Sparkle plus catcher, your opponent's going to sit there and be like, oh, well, I guess I lose now. I didn't plan for this. You were supposed to use Elsa Sparkle and then not be able to boss. But
Yeah.
now because of my calculated Clara play cannot happen. And I guess I'm done. And like, so you have that new level of aggression that kind of throws off, because Mew's been like for a while now, like that people build their lists around calculating out, you know, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and I win the game against Mew VMAX every time if I draw those cards in that order, right? But now you throw catchers involved, and it does kind of shake things up. Also, catcher plus Marnie combo is also like a really cool one. So I think, I mean, I like the catchers for sure. Is it correct? I don't know. The Scoop Net Punkaboo, not a big fan of that, especially with like less Path to the Peak. If Path to the Peak comes back,
Yes.
I think there's a good argument for the Punkaboo though, for sure.
There is definitely less path, it feels like, right now. So it does still feel like Mew is in a pretty good spot. I will say, if you are, I think that the catchers, I talked about this last week a little bit. I think catchers kind of go hand in hand with playing less double turbo energy. So if you're fitting in a couple basic psychic energies, in order to get your attachments to your Mew, you're likely going to have to attach plus a Lesser Sparkle. And
Yeah.
if you're doing that, that means you can't play boss's orders. So you need catcher for those instances, or at least to have the
Yeah.
option to try to hit catcher for those instances. So I think if you're playing heavy basic psychic and like a 1 or 2 training courts, whatever it may be, you definitely want catchers. But if you're kind of leaning more into Natalie's list and just playing all special energies, I wouldn't worry about catchers. I would go more with the boss strategy because it's
Yeah.
still a bit more consistent. And honestly, I wouldn't hate rolling up with just the all special energy Mew list this weekend. Like, Whimsicott's probably going to be way less popular than it was. It'll still be around for sure. And you're kind of accepting, if you're not playing basic energies, you're going to take a loss in that matchup. It might be okay to do that though this weekend. I don't know. I think it's like one of those situations where you could definitely just play one. You know, maybe you still get lucky and beat the one if you pop off and have your Lesser Sparkle, you know, escape rope, whatever, turn 1. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I would be okay potentially just rolling up with that type of list this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think the double basic energy, if it's just there for Whimsicott, is very much overkill. I feel like it kind of lined up conveniently for Michael and Andrew and whoever else. I think Rowan maybe played the deck as well, played the list as well.
And Grant Shen.
Uh, yeah, Grant Shen as well. That the bees just showed up. I think it was
That's
convenient for them
true.
that
Yeah.
bees because if you go first and you're just like, all right, turn one basic energy, and I'm sure if they played against any of the B players and they were like turn two second basic energy, they were just like, what is this, man? Who does that? Why are you playing two basic energy in your list? And then you just boss KO their Arceus and you can't even have the B response to it. So I mean, yeah, it was convenient, I think, for them for that tournament specifically that they were playing the double basic psychic. I'm sure it was more so for Whimsicott than Beedrill, unless they just had a read on the meta and they were like, the B's coming through at Indianapolis. We got to pack those double basic psychics. I'm sure it was more for Whims. But if you're looking to just like help your Whims matchup, I think one is more than enough. But if you really are trying to get, just dominate Whimsicott and then also have that cute line, it doesn't just beat the B Arceus deck, but it's like it makes it very hard for them to win if you're able to pull off back-to-back basic psychics. So if you're looking for like a decent tech in that matchup, the double basic psychic definitely is pretty good. But yeah, I think you do want to kind of go the catcher route, right? Because you want to be able to be aggressive with your gusts, and if you're playing less DTE, then you're going to be using also Sparkle to get your attacks off. Gonna maybe need those catchers. And I'm definitely not a big fan of playing 8 energy. The more cards you play that you can't play down within a turn in Mew, it gets worse and worse and worse. You want to
Yep.
be playing as few Pokemon and as few energy as possible. So I think 7 energy. You don't really want to go more than 7 energy.
Yeah, having too many energy can definitely clunk your hand up. Too many basic Pokemon as well. There's, just these cards that are unthinnable, unplayable.
Yeah.
So one more deck that I had written down that I wanted us to talk about before we talk about any like other rogue potential decks out there was Rapid Strike Malamar. So we talked about this a little bit last week. It's been a few weeks since Malamar performed well. There was a couple in top 16 in some of these tournaments, but none in top 8. Hasn't performed well, but I think it's obviously still powerful. Its popularity definitely went down leading into the past weekend of tournaments, but I feel like it's in a spot where we could see the popularity rise once again heading into this weekend because there's less big charms on Arceus decks and there's a lot less Avery in decks in general, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just getting better and better for it, but I think people are figuring out the cute plays you can do as Arceus decks in the matchup, which is making it's like even though they're cutting the Averys and the big charms, figuring out those plays. And I feel like so many people just didn't know to play for those plays or weren't playing for the plays, and that's where
Plays
Malamar
like
was getting a lot of
what?
their wins. Like in the build that Bradner used, you can KO a Malamar and Inkay in the same turn with Aqua Bullet with triple Zigzagoon Ping, and I did that 2 or 3 times in my tournament run with the deck. Like, it's not hard to set up because Malamar is a deck that isn't pressuring your initial setup very hard. So you just need to find that like one good turn to play a Research or a Marnie, and once you get enough Drizzles online, you're doing the Aqua Bullet triple Goon Ping or just like quick shooting Goon Ping KO and Inkay KO the Malamar. You just have to know those plays exist, and they really aren't that hard to play for as the Arceus player. So outside of playing Avery and Big Charm, and a lot of people are cutting the quick shooting though as well. Like as long as you know those plays exist, that puts a lot of pressure on the Malamar player. And I think you almost have to keep Manaphy in the deck as Malamar, not even for the Urshifu matchup, but for the Arceus matchup to stop the Aqua Bullet from getting a double knockout. Because
Yeah.
you're it's almost like you could bench a third NK, but you have a bigger problem with them actually just drawing 2 prize cards on the turn. So you need to stop the double prize draw. You could bench that third NK and they go knock out Malamar, knock out NK. You can still attack next turn, but it almost puts them too far ahead too consistently. So you need to go Malamar, NK, Manaphy to stop them from ever getting that double prize draw turn. So I feel like that's what's kind of hurting Malamar more than anything. And yeah, but besides that, it is looking, I guess, better overall because yeah, the Averys and the big charms are going away. But then definitely put your escape ropes in. I think double escape rope is just the way to go. I think it just helps so much in the early game to make sure you're actually taking knockouts and putting the pressure on your opponent to not give them too much time to set up those big Aqua Bullet plays or the Mew doing all their psychic leap plays and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the Guru is another interesting tech option. If you're playing a lot more non Rapid Strike cards, it's, obviously it is another non Rapid Strike card, but it can give you the option to dig one card deeper potentially, which sometimes just that one card difference really does make all the difference. It feels like when I'm playing Rapid Strike Malamar. Back when I was playing Boss's Orders in the list, it's like I always open up with the Boss's Orders. That thing finds its way to my hand really quickly, and it can never leave because I don't have quick balls, I don't have research, right? It's just always going to be -1 off my Cynthia's ambitions for the entire game. So I like the potential that Guru gives you for that. Obviously, it does have downsides, though. The double rope, I do think, is very good. But any other rogue decks that we want to talk about? Anything else that you think has potential? We saw some other cool things on the stream in Indianapolis. We had the Arceus Charizard VMAX deck on. We had Arceus Malamar VMAX from Piper, who we actually saw her do well with that same deck in EUIC. So, that's a proven archetype, I would say, even though it's not really popular. She took it and did well at EUIC, made changes to her list, and got top 32 once again in Indianapolis. And then we've got, some other things out there. There was a lot of stuff in day one that was really cool. Like there was like an amazing Reshiram deck that was floating around there doing pretty well. I think did just miss day two, but that was really cool one to see from M. Taylor. John Mostovi was playing it as well, I know. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Any other rogue things out there that you think could pop up and, make a run in day two?
I think Ice Rider is probably the main one. So it's got a bad Mew matchup. Not a bad. You can beat it. It's one of those things where it's like you can beat it, but it's like just give me Arceus all day, right? Ice Rider I feel like matches up really well into the Arceus decks. So I could definitely see Ice Rider. I would be surprised if if a couple Ice Riders didn't top 8 between the 3 events, because I think there's just so much Arceus. I mean, we've been talking about like Arceus is getting more and more and more popular. And Ice Rider is good up against Arceus. There was one in top 8. I just checked. There was one in top 8 of Joinville. We don't have the access to those. They were doing an Arceus Ice Rider. So I don't know the best way to play Ice Rider. If I had more time to invest, I think that would be a deck I would definitely be looking at, trying to nail down my Mew matchup to try and play that as well as possible. And then
now you still got a few days. There's still time. You can iron it out.
And then you just clean it up. I feel like the Arceus matchup is so good for Ice Rider. Like I don't know how from the few games I've played against and as it's just like I don't know how you win as Arceus consistently up against Ice Rider. Maybe it's just the inconsistencies the deck will catch up with it throughout, a 9-round tournament, 14-round tournament, whatever. But it seems pretty well positioned with Arceus getting more and more popular. You also bop Whimsicott. And I don't know, maybe with a Manaphy, you can beat Urshifu if you really want to beat Urshifu. But once again, like I said, I think I agree with you. I think Urshifu will be, as popular at least as it was at Indianapolis. I think it will have a way better showing overall besides Tor just getting second. But I'm personally not teching for it as of right now. I don't think I'm gonna. Of course, if I'm playing new, I don't really have to. You kind of just play the matchup and hope they don't draw too well off your Marnie. But if I was playing like Arceus, like I don't think I'd tech for the Urshifu matchup. I'd be like, well, if I hit it, that kind of sucks. But we'll see if the Marnie can catch him or not. But yeah, Ice Rider I think is my my sleeper for sure going into this weekend. The Malamar VMAX is really cool. Yeah, Piper's been doing really well with that. It'd be cool to see more of that. It'd be cool to see a top 8 out of Malamar VMAX, maybe Piper. But yeah, that's actually like just I feel like there's not quite the deck almost is just like a little bit. It's not enough control cards to like help it out. Like you get that Marnie plus the attack, but that's like not enough against the Inteleon decks consistently.
Next
to shut
set
them down.
though, Roxanne, Dark Patch, baby. Be a good time to be a Malamar VMAX player. I don't know.
That's true. That's true. It could get pretty good then for sure. Because that's all you don't even need Arceus at that point, right? You should like turn 2 VMAX to KO the first one. You Roxanne and you're cruising from there. Yeah, we could definitely see it making waves in the next format for sure. Yeah, I'm super excited for the next set. I hope a lot of things come out of that set, and hopefully not too many things get fully pushed out of the format. I wouldn't mind to see Mew leave, of course, but hopefully Arceus can stick around. Maybe Urshifu.
Well, I think that's going to cover all the decks leading into the next weekend of tournaments, of course, mainly New Jersey, but also Perth and Lille regionals. We will take a couple more questions at the end here. But before we get to the last few questions, we've got everyone's favorite part of the podcast. Guess that flavor text. And it is Azul's turn to pick a card and read the little bit of flavor text in the bottom right corner. And then I have to guess what card Azul has picked. If I don't know what it is just off the bat, I've got 3 different lifelines I can choose from. I can either ask what set the card is from, what stage the card is, or have Azul read an attack name from the card. And if I do it without the lifelines, I get 4 points. 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, so on and so forth. Right now we're tied at 1 point apiece. This is our second episode with the lifelines. I think it was maybe a little helpful in the last one. I think I maybe went a little too hard with Skiddo. I think maybe I overestimated Azul a little bit by giving him a Skiddo card. He probably didn't even know Skiddo was a Pokemon until after that episode. But all right, Azul, hit me with it. What do we got?
Okay, flavor text. It lives in caves on the sea floor and creates giant whirlpools every time it moves.
I feel like I know what this is. It's got to be.
I thought you were just about to say it.
Thinking,
I was like, what?
Well, I want to build up to what I'm thinking about a little bit. So, like, I'm thinking about the early Pokemon games that I played. Pokemon Gold and Silver when I was a kid, renting them from Blockbuster. Of course, the section of the game where you're trying to navigate through with surf, and then you get to these whirlpools that you got to pass through. And the Pokemon that you would always find in this area, I feel like were Tentacool, Tentacruel, Shelder, and Cloyster. And you talked about this Pokemon hiding in caves, which I don't feel like is really adequate for Shelder or for Tentacool.
Lives in caves.
Yeah, lives in caves. Doesn't really feel adequate for Tentacruel or Tentacool, but definitely this sounds very Shelder-esque to me, I guess.
Big Shelder vibes.
I don't know. I could use a lifeline here, or I could just go for the big 4 points potentially. All right. I think I will use one of my lifelines, at least for now, and see if it narrows it down a little bit for me. All right, one more time. Just read the flavor text one more time real quick.
It lives in caves on the sea floor and creates giant whirlpools every time it moves.
Man, it also could be like Lugia or something like that. All right, let me ask what set the card is from.
Plasma Freeze.
So that eliminates Lugia because there is a Lugia in Plasma Freeze, but it's a Lugia EX, which does not have flavor text.
How do you know that? See, this is why this one does nothing for me.
But
what?
It's very helpful for me and
that?
Probably for many of the listeners as well. I do believe that there is a Shelder and Cloyster line in Plasma Freeze. I am pretty sure there's a Shelder and Cloyster in Plasma Freeze. I guess because I feel like it could be either of them. I'll ask what stage the card is and use one more lifeline.
Stage 2.
All right. Well, I was wrong. It is not Shelder or Cloyster. What water type in Plasma Freeze? I guess I don't know that it's a water type, but it probably is a water type. It hides on the seafloor, right? So, well, all my certainties have now gone out the window. I guess I probably should use my last lifeline because I don't know anymore. Tell me, read an attack name for me, Azul.
Tri-Bullet.
Oh, I feel like that should be a giveaway, but I just can't think of it right now. Tri-Bullet. Oh, man. Gen 5, water type. Shoot, man. Lives on the sea floor. And see, this
lives in the caves.
Okay, but
lives in caves on the seafloor.
Yeah, on the seafloor. Yeah. Don't try to confuse me now, bro. Maybe it's a fossil Pokemon. What are the fossil Pokemon in Gen 5? I don't think it's a fossil Pokemon. Maybe it is a fossil Pokemon. Is it? No, the Caracosta is a stage 1 from Gen 5 cards. It's a stage 1. It's not a stage 2. All right, I need to guess. I'm sorry. I just don't know. I was so confident with Shelder, bro. Man.
All right, Chip, what you got?
Oh, bro. I'm trying to think to the set. I feel like there's like a Seismitoad in Plasma Freeze. I don't think that's it, but I think that's what I got to go with. Is it Seismitoad, Azul?
It is not Seismitoad, Chip. It is Kingdra.
Oh.
I didn't know what attack name to use because I was like, the other one was Dragon Vortex. I was like, I don't know if I should say Dragon Vortex. That seems.
Oh.
So I said
I
Tri
should
Bullet
have known
instead.
that. That's bad. That was a free dub right there.
All right, we remain tied at 1-1. We'll see if I can gain a lead in next week's guess that flavor text.
Dang it, man. It's a dragon type card. Not a
It is,
water
yes.
type card, but it is a water type.
We got a couple more questions from the Twitter to answer. First one coming from Pysac1. Does Arceus need a form of energy acceleration to attack turn 2 if it whiffs the energy attachment turn 1? Moltres E-Switch, Melanie, so on and so forth. Chip, you rocking anything? Are you always looking to rock something like that if you're playing Arceus?
I mean, I think having those plays available is nice. It depends on the version of the deck you're playing. I think if you're playing Arceus B-Drill, I wouldn't really worry about it as much because your way to attack on turn 2 if you whiff a turn 1 attachment is through the B-Drill a lot of the time. And then if your B-Drill gets knocked out, then your Raihan is activated to go into your Arceus. So I would always play Raihan, I feel like. I think most Arceus decks should play one Raihan because it can just create so many different plays for you, especially alongside Inteleon. You can easily find it.
Good.
Yes, and yeah, Aqua Bullet obviously very strong as well. So I think I'm always playing one Raihan. If I'm playing Beedrill, I'm not worried about an additional form of acceleration. Though I think if you're playing the Ian Robb version of the deck, E-Switch is really good in that deck. Not just for the turn 2 attack with Arceus, but in order to create a Hoopa a lot easier out of nowhere, in order to create, a Zapdos out of nowhere if your opponent only has like 2 Pokemon V in play. So I think it's worth playing Energy Switch in your Arceus deck, but not just for the reason of whiffing the turn 2 attack.
Yeah, I think, definitely. And maybe that's why we see, like, theoretically the most consistent build of Arceus, and we see Pablo consistently doing well with it, is just the straightforward water build with the Melee. That does add a lot to your turn 1s, right? It's just nice to have, or your turn 2, right? It's just nice to have that around, some way to make sure you're attacking turn 2 with Arceus, right? Like, you just want to attack turn 2 with Arceus if you go first. You don't want to lose that advantage that you had. And I think maybe that's why we see the B-Barrel build generally struggling more, is because those games where you whiff the turn 1 attachment going first, that's bad. And especially when you're in the mirror match or up against Mew, whatever it might be, if you have to rely on Raihan on the following turn, you have way less going on for you on that. You're not playing a research or a Marnie or a boss or anything like that, right? So maybe that's why the B-Barrel build more consistently comes up a little bit short, is because all those games where you whiff the turn 1 attachment, you don't have a follow-up. And for the B build specifically, I think it's a little bit less punishing because you can just go, oh, I whiffed. Okay, they knocked something out. Okay, Beedrill 1-hit KO into Raihan. Set up your next Arceus to attack with and go from there. So I think it's a little bit less punishing in the Beedrill build specifically. But all the other builds, everyone who's played Arceus knows that it sucks when you whiff that turn 1 energy attachment. So having some way to kind of, recoup and like get back into that turn 2 attack, even if you're not using a boss on that turn, maybe, and you have to go with something else, it still feels really good. So I think you want to be, but like I said, the B-Barrel builds and stuff like that can't really afford to put it in there. And then when you're like rocking a dark build with like 1 water energy, getting the Melanie in there as well, like you gotta find a water, you gotta discard the water, you could prize your water, like you could prize your Melanie, like it just becomes a little bit harder to want to include like 1 Melanie when you only play
If
one
you're playing
water.
a lot of water energy, I definitely think you're playing Melanie in the deck,
Yeah.
just because it's good in general. But I feel like that is kind of the version that's almost like an out of date version of Arceus. It feels like I feel like if you're just playing Arceus and Inteleon with water energies, you should probably just be playing Dark and like throwing some Galarian Moltres stuff in there.
It feels like, even when I like looked at Pablo's list that he got top 8 with at Indianapolis, it felt like there wasn't that much in there. It felt like, wait, there's like you're not playing any of the dark stuff.
It's obviously still good. But it's like, is there not just a better option out there?
Yeah, like you're I guess the biggest advantage you have, but it doesn't even seem like that because I've seen dark builds with 2 Charon's Care. As like Pablo's running, the 2 Charon's Care. Like that list always plays 2 Charon's Care in the Pal Pad. But then you look at like Ian Rob's list, and Ian Rob is like, I think even Rob even tweeted is like, just take prize cards. Why are you using Charon's Care? Just go boss
Take
something. And I
knockouts. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's fair. A way to kind of analyze the matchup of the Arceus mirrors is just like your goal is to take one prize card per knockout. And if you get fortunate enough to get two prize cards on a KO, you even get that much further ahead. But your goal is at the very least to take one prize card per knockout. So when you hit their Arceus and they Charon's Care, you're like, well, now I have to respond with Charon's Care. But if you just boss KO a Drizzile or a Sobble, then you're like, okay, I went one attack, one knockout. And you just repeat that process, draw 6 prize cards over 6 attacks, and you've won the game, right? So, and then whenever you can slip in those 1-8 KOs on the Arceus Vs, or the Zapdos comes in and KOs a V-Star, that's where you can kind of get your advantage. Instead of trying to prolong the game and get into those weird loop situations that no one likes to play and get a bunch of ties, just start taking KOs and then hope you draw get 6 prize cards before your opponent.
Next question comes from @Jared_Paxton, who asks, for those heading to their first regionals, is it worth setting a goal, or better to just experience the event for what it is and see how you go? And I think that setting goals is great for sure, but I think it's fine to set the goal of just experience the event. Like my goal is to have my goal is bro, what? Azul has his head on the table right now laughing.
Well, it's like Paxton's question was, is it worth setting a goal or better to experience the event and see how it is and see how you see
But
how
that is setting a goal.
I mean I guess I kind of agree with you. I guess I just don't ever think in terms, like my mind does not work that way in terms of, my goal when I show up to an event is always to win the event, but it's not like if I don't, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't win the event. Are you kidding me? It's like if someone set their goal to, make day 2, and then they don't make day 2, I feel like just setting a goal in general should never be a priority. If your goal in general is to just get better at the game, your goal should just be to show up to the event and experience the event and have fun and just play your best. And then when you win, or you day 2, or you go 0-3, as long as you felt like you played your best, that's all you could have done anyways. And I think there's just kind of like the goal thing is just kind of, I guess I have personally like a disconnect from that. I just don't understand the point, and it doesn't make sense to me in my brain of like the point of setting a goal. Like you should just show up and try and play as best as you can, and then from there go on, because there is so much RNG in the game sometimes. Even if you feel like you should be making day 2 or this or that or whatever, placing in a top 8, like sometimes you just won't. Sometimes you will, but as long as you're improving and getting better, you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, definitely a good point. I do think goal setting just in life in general is, good practice to go about. But, what you're saying, definitely makes sense. But, maybe is coming from the mind of someone who's a bit more competitive about it versus someone who is just looking to enjoy the game, have a good time, or like play on a more casual level, I think like your goal, obviously, win regionals, win internationals, eventually win worlds, right? Someone else might just be like, I want to make top 8 at some point. I want to make day 2 at some point. And like, that way I have this, because I'm not going to worry as much about, trying to get my worlds invite, or I'm not trying to become a world champion necessarily. I just, want to qualify for worlds. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that is like, with that kind of mindset, I guess it's a little bit different, because then it's like, you just have to keep showing up to events, but it's like, it's just so hard to like, you just never know if you're just going to dead draw a couple games in a row, or something like that. And that can just happen to anyone, where it's like, if I made my goal to put out a YouTube video every day in a week, that's like something I can like do, right? But I can't be like, I'm going to show up to New Jersey, I'm going to go undefeated day 1. I'm going to go 9-0 and not drop a game, right? Like that's not,
you have
that's
less
something
control
I can like just
over it.
Yeah, there's so much less control over it all. Like your goal in the game should always be to just be like, and I guess the biggest thing could always be down to make your preparation better for each event, right? Just like that would be the biggest thing. And then when you show up, just try and play your best. But then I think it always comes back to your preparation for the event. It should be the thing that you mainly look at to improve, and be like, as long as I feel like I prepared better for each event and started playing better in each event after that, you've achieved your goal. Then that was your goal, is just to keep feeling like you're improving at the game, and don't kind of tie placements and stuff to it too much, and eventually you will get there. If that truly is something you want to do, is become one of the best players in the world, you'll eventually get there. You just have to keep improving at the game.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for the support as always. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to leave us a review, a rating on whatever podcasting platform you are listening on. It really does help us out so much. It helps more people discover the podcast. It only takes a few seconds. Just whatever rating you feel is fitting, please feel free to leave that. It really does help us out so much. And also be sure to follow the podcast on our social medias. You can check out the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't ever miss an episode. And you also can follow us over on Twitter at uncommon_energy. And you can also follow myself and Azul on our personal Twitters at Azul_GG or at Trainer Chip.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks for watching, everybody. I know I was a little bit tired and rambly in this one again, just like last week. Hopefully, I have a little bit better, or a little bit. Been getting some good sleep. I just been tired. But anyways, see you guys next week, 7 a.m. Eastern on the Tuesdays. Peace.
Peace.